Okay, so hi, and thank you for watching our presentation about online teamwork's impact on anxiety and group cohesion. My name is Deborah Maxfield. I'm a lecturer in English education at Rikyo University.
And my name is Matthew Kocourek. I currently work in the Oregon Department of Human Services Self-Sufficiency Program here in Portland, Oregon. But before this, Debbie and I worked together at Rikyo.
So together, we're going to introduce the results of a project we did. Matthew?
Okay, next slide, please. Today, we will cover the theoretical background of this study, and then the study itself. And then after that, we'll present some of the results and discuss some suggestions based on those findings to make your group work more successfully. Next, please. The Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology has begun to emphasize the importance of communicative language teaching approach within EFL classes, requiring more and more student-student interaction. Next, please. And in the current study, we focused on group cohesion and anxiety, two factors we believe may greatly impact such interactions. Next, Debbie.
So group cohesion is something that many of us have experienced, but it's pretty hard to define. We've maybe all worked with a good team or relaxed with a close group of friends, but producing one definition to fit all groups is kind of tricky. Kota et al.'s definition can be broken down as group cohesion is how committed we are to working or remaining together as a group to achieve goals, as being changing and flexible, and it depends on reactions from others in the group. So norms are the values or behaviors of a group. For example, whether a class prioritizes getting high marks on a test or not. So these can obviously have a direct impact on classroom atmosphere in an L2 environment, with implications for student participation and motivation. Now, measuring group cohesion is also tricky because we belong to a diverse range of groups, and the role we play in each one is different. So the questionnaire that we've developed for this study cannot be claimed to measure group cohesion objectively, only to evaluate participants' subjective and self-reported experiences with their teams. So now I've put everyone off this idea. Why is it important? Well, group cohesion has been shown to affect our social identity, or in a nutshell, our sense of self in relation to others. It affects our self-esteem, our implicit and usually subconscious assumptions about our own worth, and anxiety, which we'll be discussing a bit more fairly soon. Cohesion's also proven to be essential for groups to succeed on tasks or otherwise obtain good performance. So we'll explore how this applies to teaching next. Now, while group cohesion can affect many aspects of self psychologically, it's for its value in the classroom that we're discussing it today. So as part of many CLT-based courses, students need to participate in interactive tasks, during which group dynamics can affect task performance. So participation could mean like participate on a task, but also generally participate actively in class. As fellow teachers, you may well have had classes that participate more willingly than others, where the students communicate more freely or more energetically. So the effects of working in good teams in an L2 environment has been covered by Dornier and Murphy, who describe about how working in groups with a successful group climate can really affect motivation and enable students to successfully complete tasks. In the case of group-based tasks, one measure that can affect success is the level of group cohesion, that unity of a group, which is like a measure of how committed members are to the group and how comfortable they feel together. Dornier and Murphy also detail stages a group goes through, some of which are catchily termed forming, storming, performing. So group formation is when group norms are established, those crucial first early encounters with their peers and with their teacher. So this is where the atmosphere or the climate of a group begins to set in. Now, this could be of particular importance in Japan, where the ability to live and work harmoniously with others is of particular cultural importance, due in part to lasting influence from Confucian virtues of harmony and obedience. Heinrich et al.'s meta-analysis found that East Asian peoples, in comparison with Western peoples, have a greater tendency to view themselves in terms of their roles and responsibilities and relationships with others, and generally possess greater motivations to conform to group norms. Now, while not everyone within a culture will behave in the same way, of course, this tendency has been remarked upon in several other papers. Writing specifically about growing up in Japan, authors Sugihara and Katsurada found that the emphasis on socialization and group identity begins at a really early age, in which children learn that they're part of a group, and without the group identity, they don't exist. Wow, it's hard to imagine expressing that more strongly. And if this tendency is as strong as claimed, we can well expect it to follow children into second language learning environments within Japan too. So next, Matthew will tell us a little more about anxiety.
Thank you, Debbie. State anxiety is the likelihood of being anxious in all situations. And the state of being anxious in the language study context is L2 anxiety. It is believed that the amygdala, a region of the brain responsible for responding to emotional stimuli, particularly these types of emotions, is where this is modulated. The negative effects of anxiety include difficulty remembering things, as successful recall of information tends to be adversely affected by strong emotional states, which also impairs executive functions, or how the mind switches between updating currently necessary information for a task and inhibition or removal of irrelevant information and stimuli. Moreover, if the ability to ignore irrelevant information and focus on a given task is worsened, then working memory capacity, or the amount of information that can be simultaneously processed, recalled, or activated, is also reduced. These issues can be particularly problematic in a language study context, which may be why there is so much study of this topic. Next slide, please. So, research has suggested that L2 anxiety reduces not only motivation and willingness to communicate, but also how effectively students can process or even produce an L2. But the good news is that group cohesion may reduce much of these negative effects. Next, please. And in this study, we explored whether this might also be true in an online context. Next, please. In 2014, MEXT announced plans to improve English language fluency and communicative ability through its English Education Reform Plan, which recommended that universities conduct classes in English and focus on higher language skills, including presentations, debates, and negotiations. Lecturers were asked to teach 2 new courses at Rikyo, debate and presentation, starting from 2020. And in the fall of semester, both classes were taught via Zoom, an online video conferencing platform, I'm sure you know. Based on previous psychological and EFL research on the potential benefits of cohesive groups for reducing anxiety and improving L2 learning outcomes, students were assigned to work in regular groups of around 5 students in our study. Each team worked together for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, working together for much of each week's lessons, with the expectation that the remaining together would encourage peer support and bonding between students, and thereby reduce both anxiety and foster motivation. That's why the current study will explore these 3 research questions. 1, whether the use of an online method of learning affected anxiety and/or social anxiety, whether the use of teams led to cohesive groups, and finally, whether teamwork affected students' L2 anxiety and/or social anxiety. Debbie?
Sure. So at the end of the 2020 fall semester, a total of 98 students responded to an online questionnaire on their affective and social experiences of online learning. Most questions used a 6-item Likert scale. These responses were converted into numeric data, and statistical analysis was run in SPSS to find overall trends, mean, standard deviation, Pearson's R correlations between items, and p-values. Negatively worded questions were reverse coded in SPSS to maintain comparability between items. It was hoped that using this positive and negative wording of the same concept could maximize reliability of the questionnaire. The word choice type question required students to select 3 words from a list to basically describe their emotional state whilst working with their class versus working with their team. Okay, so
did the current study find the predicted results? Well, for question number 1, it's unclear. The results did not clearly show whether online learning affects L2 or social anxiety. More research needed. Number 2, yes, the results did seem to suggest that using teams led to more cohesive groups, though how cohesive did seem to depend on a few factors. And third, definitely, the results did seem to suggest that working with teams helped to reduce student L2 anxiety and social anxiety, though more research is needed on all of this, of course. Let's go deeper. Debbie?
So next, we'll discuss some of those key findings. So the majority of students had found teamwork helpful and useful, even for those somewhat uncomfortable in the group. We found that group cohesion is a basic requirement for success, without which other social benefits cannot occur. And finally, that the relationship between online learning and L2 anxiety was still somewhat unclear. So the first finding was that students had found teamwork helpful and useful. Most students reported they found working with a team helpful, enjoyable, felt less L2 anxiety, formed cohesive groups, and felt relaxed with their teams. Great stuff. A strong correlation was found between working with a team helped me to speak English, and I felt relaxed with my teammates, implying that students felt that a comfortable social climate had a major impact on L2 use. Perhaps students were more willing to communicate in cohesive groups, or maybe teammates were more likely to offer L2 assistance with cohesive groups. Another strong correlation was found between working with a team helped me in this class and I enjoyed working with my teams. So moderate correlations were found between working with a team helped me in this class and I felt relaxed with my teammates, or I enjoyed working with my teams. Now, these suggest that a relaxed and enjoyable social climate was related to successful task performance. Correlations between there was good teamwork in all my teams and working with a team helped me in this class could indicate that students felt productive teammate was an essential part of effective learning, as well as a major part of whether they enjoyed the task, as good teamwork correlated fairly closely with I enjoyed working with my teams. So finally, correlational analysis revealed there was the strongest relationship between I did not feel comfortable talking with teammates and I didn't feel comfortable using English with teammates. All respondents had provided exactly matching answers to both questions, strongly suggesting that social and L2 anxiety may have compounded in teams with a poor social climate, whereas cohesive teams reduced both types of anxiety. Both correlated moderately with it was difficult to talk with my team. And this would fit with previous findings indicating that L2 anxiety significantly impacts social climate. Now, moderate correlations were found between it was difficult to talk with my team and other negatively coded items, such as sometimes my teams didn't work well together or teammates rarely helped me. So this suggests that feeling comfortable with a team was the most basic requirement for effective teamwork and task performance. Students who worked in teams that did not feel they could communicate or cooperate smoothly could not enjoy further social benefits, such as reducing L2 anxiety or providing peer-to-peer assistance with speaking English. It seems that the key to productive and mutually beneficial teamwork is that students must feel comfortable, which indicates the need to establish cohesive groups with supportive and helpful group norms. However, these findings don't mean that students usually have a negative experience with their teams. Most students disagreed with these statements. For instance, over 75% of students disagreed that sometimes my teams didn't work well. Almost 80% did not believe that my teammates rarely helped me. So next, Matthew.
So The use of teams seemed to allow students to bond with each other and form cohesive groups, and had positive effects on L2 and social anxiety. However, no particularly strong correlations were found between items relating to an online method of learning and L2 or social anxiety, suggesting that students' anxiety was neither positively nor negatively affected in any statistical way by switching to an online learning platform. To summarize these feelings, during the online courses, students were asked which words best match your experience in class and which words best match your experience with teams, by choosing up to 3 words from a list. The most commonly chosen words for both in class and in teams condition was fun, with friendly a close second. Students were more commonly reported feeling relaxed when working with their teams than they generally did in class, and a greater number had reported feeling anxious in class than they did when working with teams. If students felt more relaxed with the familiar, close-knit group of their team, this could be a good indication of cohesion. However, an alternative explanation could be that this was due to the online learning environment. For teamwork activities, for example, students worked in Zoom breakout rooms only with their teammates. Yet when they came together as a whole, students would all appear on the same Zoom screen and therefore be observable to all classmates, which may have increased anxiety during class. Debbie?
Okay, yeah, cheers, Matt. So thinking a bit more about anxiety online and face-to-face, although many students had reported that I felt anxious about talking to classmates online before I started this class, afterwards over 80% reported feeling less anxiety than they'd expected, agreeing that after studying in this class, it was less scary than I had expected. A majority had believed that speaking English online was easier than speaking English face-to-face, but there was no clear consensus on how L2 anxiety was affected by online learning, as around half agreed that I felt more anxious when speaking English online than speaking English face-to-face. So taken together, these results imply that although many students had found using an L2 online slightly easier than face-to-face, studying online did not greatly affect L2 anxiety. Well, regardless of whether classes are conducted online or face-to-face, teachers can aim to mitigate anxiety in the early stages of group formation by developing a learning environment in which students feel comfortable both with each other and with the teacher, such as through icebreaker activities to build acceptance and trust. We're going to look at some suggestions for these next. Back to you, Matthew.
Thank you. So, though not all of the results were as strong as others, we tried to look at the stronger data and think about which results were most helpful for teachers. And then we thought about possible tasks or changes that you could make, which would lead to the greatest changes based on that data. These are our suggestions. First, we believe that building cohesion early is very important, and that one way to do that is with norm building tasks, such as icebreakers, which Debbie will cover shortly. We also believe that what is best for a task may not be what's best for a team, which means what it sounds like: accomplishing language learning goals, while important, may not always be our first priority. Our third suggestion is that you can consider building in pair and group work throughout the course through a variety of tasks. I will be covering that later. We will go over these suggestions in more detail. Deb, please share your ideas first.
Sure. So one of those was that, well, while our findings suggest that the key to productive teamwork is that students must first feel comfortable with each other. So therefore, establishing a comfortable learning environment and building rapport should be a priority and not a secondary outcome of other educational activities. Now, we've all heard that first impressions count, and it seems that the best time to start is in the first lesson, right? When a class is meeting for the first time, and they'll collectively start forming the atmosphere and norms for that group going forwards. So using icebreaker activities that are geared towards building a supportive learning environment can make this process both conscious and explicit. From the student's effective standpoint, meeting the psychological need to belong to a group is the most important thing that can be accomplished in the first lesson together. Allowing classes to democratically select their group norms through activities like this could help them to not only create a productive team, but also to create a sense of shared or superordinate identity that can increase team cohesion and reduce social anxiety. Now, as Matthew mentioned before, what's best for the task might not be best for the team. Current ministry guidelines for education aim to for L2 education, aim to develop students' fluency and higher language skills. However, our findings suggest that success on team tasks is largely underpinned by students feeling comfortable together. Teachers may be under pressure to satisfy curricular objectives, such as teaching vocabulary or critical thinking skills. And of course, accomplishing these language learning goals is important. However, exclusively focusing on task success to the detriment of forming successful teams at the start of a semester might not be the best way to set students up for a course. The next stage of this research project aims to test this. I hope to compare results from students on two activities, one designed to build team goals, A, and the other to build task goals, B. Students did activity either A or B in lesson 1 to choose team or task goals, then completed a questionnaire. So at the end of the course, I'll compare the two groups via paired samples t-tests and see if there was a discernible effect size between activities. And next, Matthew's going to talk us through some suggestions for pair and group work in general.
Thank you. Though we did not discuss it here, there was some data with slightly more positive survey results from students in debate courses compared to presentation. However, in my classes, I had some very strong results about my presentation course. And I think this might be partly because I took our ideas about group cohesion and put them in practice. Simple ways you can do that are using a homework time outside of class if it's an online course, which is what I did, using recorded Zoom sessions where students covered homework, reviewed concepts, and did icebreakers. I think that these are ways that you can also build group cohesion out of class and in readily group-oriented tasks. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much. With that, let's move on to our conclusion.
So we found that group cohesion was a basic requirement, that the relationship between online study and anxiety is somewhat unclear, and that most students found groups helpful, even those who had reported discomfort.
And we recommend building cohesion early, remembering that what's best for the task is not always what's best for the team, and please include more time for building group cohesion. Thank you.
So here are our references, also available on request, or feel free to pause the recording to check those if needed. So finally, from us, thank you very much for watching our presentation.
Thank you.